Welcome to Ciao Bella, hosted by me, Erica Firpo, a travel journalist based in Rome. Each episode of Ciao Bella, I sit down with Italy's creators, contemporary artists and artisans, designers, culinary experts, heritage brands, and innovative aesthetes, and more who are defining and redefining 21st century Italy. Pull up a chair and join in. Welcome back to Travel Bites. Today, I am with Laurel Evans, food writer based in Milan, but right now she's in Liguria. Ciao, Laurel.
Ciao. How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm good. I've been baking a lot lately.
Well, can you tell me, why don't you tell me a little bit, not about baking, because I definitely want to know that, but tell me a little bit about where you are and who you are.
Okay, well, I am Laurel Evans. Like you said, I am a food writer, and I started out with a blog called Un'Americana in Cucina about 10 years ago. It means an American in the kitchen. And I really started out my career trying to convince Italians that there was more to American food than just hamburgers and hot dogs. And so I wrote 4 cookbooks about American food in Italian. And I also write articles, and I'm working on a book about Italian food, regional Italian cuisine for America.
So right now you're in Liguria. And what part of Liguria are you in?
I am in a region called Tigullio, and it is a little gulf around Sestri Levante. It is a little bit north of Cinque Terre. I'm in a town called Moneglia, which is my husband's hometown historically. I mean, he never grew up here, but his family is from here for generations, and they have a beautiful house and a really some land and a nice view. And so we usually spend all our summers and most weekends here, even during the winter.
So to give everybody a visual idea, if you imagine Italy as a country, it's in the northwestern coast near Genova. So Genoa is the capital of Liguria. I was just thinking as you were talking, is there an English way to say Liguria, like Ligur?
No, I don't think so. I've always heard Liguria even in English.
Okay, good. Because I had this moment where I was thinking like Piemonte, Piedmont. And then I was like, Liguria, that's a toughie.
Well, it's often referred to as the Italian Riviera.
Ah, well, that makes sense. Just to give you a little secret info, my dad's family is also from Liguria, but they're from the mountains right outside of Genoa, near Busala.
Okay, well, you know what? That's funny because I was telling my husband earlier, I have this call with Erika Firpo. He's like, Firpo? That's a Genovese name.
Oh, yes.
Like, oh, okay. He's like, it's very Genovese. Ask her. Is she from Liguria?
My dad's family, they're like super Genovese, yes. Whereas my mom's family is from Rome, but my dad's family is like, and everybody in my dad's town, I mean, everybody in Genova has my last name, but everybody in my dad's town has my last name and is related to me. So we're pretty tight.
Amazing.
I'm so happy to talk to you because one of the things that I love, I mean, there's a lot, I love food everywhere, and I love a lot of the recipes from Liguria, and not just because of my dad, but because I'm Golosa. And I'm so happy to talk to you on Travel Bites because I wanted to specifically talk about something I've been watching you make on your Instagram, Focaccia.
Yes, focaccia is one of my biggest loves. And I still remember the first time in Genova when my now husband, and he was my boyfriend, I'd only known him for a few weeks, and he took me to his favorite forno, so his favorite bakery in Genova, to try real Genovese focaccia. And I had never had anything like it. It was so creamy and salty and sweet and crunchy and soft at the same time. Mind was blown. And I still get that sensation when I bite into a really good piece of focaccia. But I never thought it was possible really to make it at home. It seemed like one of those things that was just you could only buy it in bakeries that had like really professional ovens. And so I never really tried until recently when I couldn't go out and buy it anymore. I never really tried to make it at home. And then I started and I just couldn't stop until I found the perfect recipe. And so I've been baking a lot of focaccia, and I think I finally nailed it.
Can you tell us a little bit about what focaccia is? And so, okay, I live in Rome, so you know that we have a different perspective on focaccia.
Yeah.
Ours is like, it's hard. It's like crunchy hard. We put a little rosemary on it. It's like almost like if you just made pizza dough, but the thinnest pizza dough possible, popped it in the oven on a super high heat and just let it crack.
But that's not what we're talking about at all.
No, Ligurian focaccia is okay. It's a flatbread, but it has a lot of oil, and then it's also brushed with or soaked really in like a salty brine solution. And so when you put it in the oven, it has this layer of salt water mixed with oil on top that then sinks into all the holes you press in it with your fingers, and it sinks in there. And while it bakes, the top part becomes all crunchy, but the inside remains soft, and the holes where you press in with your fingers remain kind of soft and moist. So you really get this explosion of different flavors and textures, and it's very unique to this region. You can't even get it. I mean, Milan is an hour and a half from Liguria, and you cannot get a decent piece of focaccia in all of Milan. So it's very unique to this region. And again, I'd never tasted anything like it before I came here.
So when you said that your boyfriend took you to, he's like, would it be like if I were like, hey, let's go out for a cappuccino? He's like, yeah, let me take you to my favorite focaccia place. Like, you know.
No, it wasn't even like a date, because focaccia is like, it's such a street food. It's not like you go to eat focaccia. It's like you go to buy bread, you know, you just like would go to the bakery and you pick up a bag of focaccia, and then you eat it on the street straight out of the bag. There's no tables in the focacceria. It's not like a pizzeria where you can go and like have like a focaccia tasting. You just eat it out of the bag on the street. And so we were just walking around, and he's like, have you ever tried focaccia? And I said, yeah, I've had the focaccia, you know, as we used to call it in the States. And he was like, no, I don't think you've ever tried this. So we just popped into this place and grabbed a few slices, and it was love for the focaccia and for the man.
Is it? I like that. Falling in love by focaccia. That could be another book.
I know.
Is it the kind of thing? So here in Rome, in the mornings, if I get up early enough, I'll run to the forno, it's the bakery. I'll pick up some pizza bianca, put it in my daughter's like bag for school. Is it the same thing? Like you pop it in your kids, like you'd also give it to your kids for a snack?
Absolutely. It's also breakfast. I mean, it's very common here to have at the bar focaccia right next to the croissants. And many people get a slice of focaccia and dip it in their cappuccino. No joke. Try it before you diss it.
That's interesting, because that's like super savory with like coffee sweet.
Yes, it's very bizarre for Italians, because they usually don't do savory in the breakfast, or much less dip things in their cappuccino that aren't croissants. But it's a very common thing here. A lot of people eat focaccia for breakfast. I mean, when we're here, my kids eat it for breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner practically.
So tell me a little bit about making it for the first time. How'd it go?
It actually went pretty good the first time. I mean, I did a lot of research on the recipe before I started. I didn't just take the first recipe off the internet that I found, but that's kind of what I do. I research recipes extensively, and, you know, like sort of look at all the different ones, see how they're different, you know, see how they're written, if the person knows what they're talking about, or if they just copied something from somewhere else. And so I bought this book called Lievitati di Liguria. So it's like kind of breads, risen doughs of Liguria. And I look, and they had like 3 or 4 different focaccia recipes in their book. And the one that they said was the most like the one you get in the bakeries is one that requires you to start the day before, because you have to make a sponge, which is like a pre-fermentation with the yeast. And then the next day you put that in your dough. And so it's kind of an intense multi-day affair, but the end result is really good.
So how many times since you made it have you made it? Like how many, you know, being that you're like, you sound like you're, I mean, I've okay. Little background, I do stalk you on Instagram. So, so I know how much you're making it, but I want everyone else to know.
Well, I've made it, this recipe, I've made it like 4 or 5 times. Not 10 to 20 yet, though. Now that my family is requesting it daily, by the end of this month, I'm sure I will get up to 10 to 15 times I've made it. But you know, it's really not that hard. It's a little bit long to do, but it's really not that difficult. And once you kind of like nail the exact quantities down, and the technique, I think the hardest thing about focaccia is getting the right technique with the holes You have to make these like dimples in the dough with your fingers in order to get that characteristic kind of like mountainous landscape that you see on the top of focaccia. But you don't want to do it with your fingertips. Like you shouldn't be doing it with your fingernails. You have to do it with like the entire last joint of your hand. So you kind of put your fingers at like a 45-degree angle and press it like that. And the holes have to be a lot of holes really close together, but you never want to go over and press the same hole twice. So there's like a kind of technique there that's really hard to explain, but I like watched YouTube videos, and even on I put the recipe up recently on my blog, and I linked to a YouTube video because it's one of those things you just kind of have to see it to figure out how it's done.
Okay. All right. So we can find that. We can find it on your blog. So quick question about focaccia, because I feel like in my past, I've also had focaccia alla cipolla. Is that possible? Focaccia with onion?
Absolutely. That's a very, very common variation, probably the most common that you see here. And yes, people also eat that for breakfast. And it's the exact same dough as the regular focaccia. They just put very thinly sliced onions on top of the dough before it goes in the oven. And so the onions get, very soft, and they let out more moisture. And so that focaccia almost is a little bit moister than the normal focaccia because of the moisture from the onions. And the onions get sweet. That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
I gotta tell you, when I was thinking about it, I was like, that's probably one of my favorite bites. Now, are there other I've only had focaccia in Genova plain, and then with chipotle with onions. Are there other offerings of focaccia, other styles?
There are, but most of them are considered, just a little bit too out there. They have ones that have olives, or I guess another version I've seen a lot is with sage, and so blended up or like really finely diced sage in the batter. And then of course there's the whole focaccia al formaggio from Recco, but that's a whole different animal. It's called focaccia, but it's like a completely different food.
Oh, interesting. Now, are there focaccia differences from where you are to Genova, or is it primarily like the same style? Like there's no like rival focaccia?
No, there's the same style. I mean, I guess the focaccia from Genova is considered the gold standard. Genova, Nervi, and also, like Recco, which has a focaccia called formaggio. That area is really considered the gold standard. But then there's also focaccia from Voltri, which has like what's it called? Like corn flour sprinkled underneath and on top, like cornmeal. Which is another variation. So anyway, like anything in Italy, you drive 5 miles and they have a different name for it, a different recipe for it. It's very, very micro-regional. But at the same time, the style of focaccia is pretty much the same. I mean, it's this flatbread that is, has oil in it, and then you would use the brine, and then you brush it with oil when it comes out of the oven as well. So, I mean, it's the same product, and then they do it more or less good depending on where you are.
It's just, like that. I think would be one of my favorite things to do, would be just to drive around Liguria and go focaccia testing.
That would be a really nice job.
I think that should be my job. I think testing any type of, I love also the Sicilian sfincione, and it's just like a new thing. I used to never be into bread until I lived full time in Italy, and then I got into focaccia and sfincione, and I love it.
Well, I think I'm probably going to say something that Italians are going to be mad at me for, but I think that the flatbreads of Italy are really, really excellent. You have focaccia, you have the piadina, you have the sfincione. We have a lot of really great flatbreads. I don't think Italians in general, apart from some places in Puglia and stuff, are that good at bread, at like really good sourdough or multigrain breads, like you'll find more in Switzerland and Germany and Northern Europe. And so I think that's also why I concentrate so much on the focaccia, because I just feel like it's this really excellent product that they've mastered. And whereas the bread, in my opinion, has been a little bit disappointing. But then again, in some regions of Italy, there's better bread.
But it's it's also like a cultural thing. If I had my husband on here, he's an archaeologist, he'd break it down as to like why, my bread's not, what bread is just to eat. It's not necessarily, it's, it's to sustain you. I think he would say it's to sustain you. It's not to entertain you,
Yeah, totally. And it was also just an accompaniment. Can't say that word. It was to accompany the meal. It wasn't the meal, whereas in Northern Europe, often like those big seedy, nutty, dark breads, were kind of
the meal. Exactly.
Yeah. So.
But I do say you could definitely make a meal out of focaccia, in my opinion.
Oh, and I have many meals.
Well, I'm so happy to hear all about focaccia from you. I would love to know, I would love to share with everyone where we can find your website, where we can find you on Instagram. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Laurel Evans, LaurelEvans. And my website is unamericanaincucina.com. It's a little bit long, so I'm sure you'll put the link in your notes, and you can also find the link on my Instagram if you just want to click it there.
I'll definitely share that. And I strongly suggest that if you're hungry, you don't visit her Instagram.
It will only make you hungrier.
It will make you so hungry. And I have to say, like, I've seen Laurel do a lot of different types of cooking, and sometimes she does barbecue, and I'm like, what the hell? This is amazing.
Well, I am from Texas. I am from Texas, so I got to get my Texan roots in there sometimes.
I mean, it's definitely like sometimes I close my phone. I'm like, Laurel, no, not again.
Stop it.
Well, it was great talking to you, and I'm really looking forward to eating focaccia with you sometime.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. It was such a privilege to be on your show, and I hope to eat focaccia with you sometime very soon as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ciao Bella. If you'd like to know more about today's guest, please visit ciaobella.co and click on the podcast link, or go directly to ciaobella.co/podcast. Want more Italy? You can find all my episodes on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher. When you have time, subscribe to iTunes and rate the podcast. What are you waiting for? And if you want to be part of the podcast, email me or DM me your Italy questions. To learn more about me and my work, go to my website, ericafirpo.com, and follow my Italy adventures on Instagram at ericafirpo. Ciao, Bella! And a very big thank you and hug to Massimiliano Yonta and Disc to Disc Studios, the producers of Ciao Bella, who continue to make me sound and feel great.